Eleanor of Aquitaine, born 1122, lived until 1204. She was the heir to Aquitania. And she was married to the French King Louis VII, whom she also joined on the Second Crusade to the Holy Land. Then the marriage with him didn't work so really out. She met Henry II, the King of England, or I think he wasn't at that point the King of England. I think he was 19 and she was 30. And she divorced Louis VII, the King of France, and just 6 weeks later she married Henry II, already in the 5th month pregnant. And 2 years later they were both crowned in Westminster Abbey. I think that was the crowning 1154 of Henry II. So Henry II, her husband then, with whom she was then until his death in 1189 married. He was the grandson of William the Conqueror. There was William the Conqueror, the Duke of Normandy. Therefore, now Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine were ruling this big area, England, completely down to France. England, Normandy, Anjou somewhere, and Aquitania, which comprises southwest France or something. And I have just information in this book. And now Henry II, grandson of William the Conqueror, who had come from the Normandy and the Norman conquest over to England, got to be king. Then he was followed by Henry I on the throne. Then Henry I had a son who drowned by crossing the Thames, and now his only heir was Matilda. He had a nephew, Stephen, and there were the 19 long winters of civil war in England. Stephen had the upper hand when at the end Matilda was living in France. Matilda had then a son together with Geoffrey of Anjou, a Plantagenet. And that son is then Henry II of Matilda and of Geoffrey of Anjou. And when Henry II crossed the river, the Channel over to the British Channel over to England, made an agreement with Stephen that on the death of Stephen he becomes the new King of England, which he then became. So in 1154 Henry II became King of England, married to Eleanor of Aquitaine, and the empire was that big empire, England down to southwest France. And that had also some problems. Henry II was traveling about the whole country, very far, and with the traveling, which took a long time. And he was trying to rule everywhere, is the book saying, as good as he could, but it was a big country with many different cultures and regions, and there was a lot of disagreement, also with Eleanor of Aquitaine, what part should be governed. And the book is saying that he was untrusting and also short-tempered, Henry II, and that he had some difficulties finding and distributing the regions among his sons, who was ruling what and who would have his future inheritance. He had 8 children with Eleanor of Aquitaine. And so Eleanor of Aquitaine plotted together with both their sons against him. Henry II got notice of it, and he imprisoned her from 1174 until his death in 1189 in Château de Chinon, a castle. And she was then living there. She could roam there free about, but she could not have contact to people who might have helped her to plot. While she was living there, she had a great influence. She brought a bit new culture to the English court lifestyle. From the sometimes rough knights, it was more expected to be gallant, and also troubadours at the courts, and the seeking for cultural accomplishments became something well regarded. So she had an influence there. And then in 1189, Henry II died. And he was followed by his son, Richard I, or Richard Lionheart, the son also of Eleanor of Aquitaine. And he was ruling for 10 years until his death in 1199 by the siege of a castle. Richard I was most of his time while he was reigning in the Middle East, crusading, or he was back from the crusade and was captured and then given over to the German Emperor Henry IV, I think, and then against ransom back, but then he died at the siege at the castle in France. So Richard I was almost all the time not ruling or not in the territory of a big England, southwest France, Normandy, Anjou, Aquitania. So she was a lot also ruling. And she was traveling about the whole country. She continued to do this even after then the death of Richard I in 1199, when her son and Richard I's brother John became king, who was then ruling until 1216, and then followed by his son and also the grandson of Eleanor of Aquitaine, Henry III, on the throne. And even at that high age, already 70, 80 years old, she was traveling about the whole country while Richard I was in imprisonment, and also then later on. And she was looking after the country, trying to keep the loyalty of the lords and the nobility, to look after the army and the estates. And she also organized the marriages, for example, for her granddaughter Blanche of Castile, together with the grandson of her former husband, King Louis VII of France. And so she was not managing there, until then she died in 1204 at Fontainebleau Abbey, and which is the place at which she also previously in life was quite some time. It was a favorite place of her, a place to which she had come previously in her life, oftentimes when she sought for a place where she could find peace. And she has there her tomb next to Henry II and Richard I. And that is according to the history of the kings and queens of England and Scotland on the page 51 and others, and 52. The positions and views expressed are the ones of a source and don't necessarily align with my own or with the ones of the entities spoken.